Greetings, zombie fans, and welcome to the 33rd episode of Reanimated. I am Stuart Tiffin, and I am coming at you from California. Joining me is my inimitable co-host, H.A. Conrad, in New York. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
We are still here in the middle of our Walking Dead season 2 review series. It's kind of a marathon, not a race, because they did go from six episodes to 13
Mm-hmm.
this year, or in 2011
This
when
is,
it.
yep.
So it is it's we are slogging through it. Although it's a fun slog to go back and revisit some of these classic episodes as well as some of the more questionable ones. So we'll be doing that today with episodes. Is it 5 and 6? Yeah, or four
Yep.
and five. I'm terrible at math and counting.
I think I said 5 and 6.
Five and
I think it's
six.
5 and 6, yeah.
Uh,
One,
eh,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Correct.
Math skills, and as well as that, we have a smattering of one piece of zombie news. It's been a pretty slim little span here in the zombie news cycle. So not too much on that front. This will be a fairly short podcast unless HA gets carried away in some sort of rant, which we can expect.
Hey,
Hey,
I wasn't
uh,
the ranty one last time.
HA's rants are brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website. And Reanimated employs their tools in the construction of our own website at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Do you recommend Squarespace, Stuart?
I think I just did.
Do
Did I
you
not?
recommend it personally?
Heartily.
I think it's a good thing. And I do appreciate their sponsorship of our lovely show about dead things, or undead things, rather.
Absolutely. Moving on from Squarespace. No segue for that, really.
That was
We
nice.
we find ourselves, as I had mentioned, in a zombie news dearth, which is
Well, we should also explain we are recording a little bit earlier than usual, so that is a part of it.
this has happened before though, where I feel like we've recorded two podcasts maybe 4 or 5 days apart, and yet the zombie news cycle is usually like a very short memory and like or not short memory, but it just like churns out new stuff all the time. And it might also be that we are becoming more um, sophisticated in our zombie news judgment. I think that's what we should put this down to, because we're not going to subject our listeners to just any old zombie news. We pick only the best and ripest plums of zombie news that are out there hanging off the tree. And mostly what we have to pick from right now is a lot of regurgitation of that which state is going to survive the zombie apocalypse kind of bullshit survey that we talked about last week, and we don't really want to keep going down that road.
Well, there's also a lot of there's also a lot of Walking Dead news and that kind of thing. So, you know.
Yeah, what with the season 4 finale just having passed here on Sunday, so which HA hasn't seen yet, so take it easy on her, guys, ladies,
Yeah.
listeners, fair listeners.
Well, this is the thing. Bill, my significant other, will not watch Walking Dead with me. So I am forced to watch it in the tiny crevices of my house, shielding the screen so that his sensitive eyes do not get, sullied by The
That is
Walking Dead.
that is very thoughtful of you.
No, it is. It's actually more because he'll just complain and complain. I can't believe you watch this kind of
On
thing.
the
So,
other end of the spectrum, I have just browbeaten my wife into finally enjoying the show, I think, for the human drama. Because really that's all it is. When you boil it all down, it's just a bunch of soap opera with zombies.
Holly's a trooper though. Bill
She
gets
is.
very cranky about things zombie, and truthfully, he is a very sensitive soul, and he will have nightmares for like days afterwards when I make him watch these things. So
Unlike some people we know who have Z dreams if they don't watch enough zombie media.
I know, I know. It's super weird.
Yeah.
And I will say when he first experienced his first Z dream, that was bad. because he'd never had one before, and it was
They're never
traumatizing.
they're never great. I mean, you I think have mentioned that you win in some of your zombie dreams. There is no
I win.
winning.
I honestly, I only remember maybe one where I didn't win.
Then your zombie
So
dreams are
my
unrealistic.
my zombie dreams are triumphant. What are you talking
You
about?
have some sort of weird Herschel effect going on in your zombie dreams. You're like, "Oh, these are just sick people. I should store them somewhere."
No way. I don't think that they're sick people. I think I should just dispatch them. That should make you worry more, probably.
Yeah. So if you're in your Z dreams, you're like a ninja.
Yeah, which is totally the opposite of my uncoordinated and clumsy self in real life. So
It's a good way to go. It's a good way to go. Dream empowerment. We should sell
dream
that.
big, dream big. But anyway, on to our lone the zombie news item
Which
in
is
terms
pretty
of
pretty
in terms of,
kick-ass.
in terms of dreaming big or whatever. Also Walking Dead related, but this was a pretty cool thing that we found.
So a website slash retail operation called 9mmammo.com, which is awesome. I wish I'd known about this website before. And they don't only sell 9mm ammo, just in case you're curious. They sell all kinds. They have an infographic where they have tallied up all the kills on The Walking Dead by weapon, and they have a little breakdown. And we will share this infographic on our website. So leading the pack is Rick Grimes, and you might notice that he carries a giant Colt Python silver revolver. It's often kind of hanging low in his hand because the thing probably weighs a good 15 pounds or something ridiculous. And it fires 357 Magnum rounds. And so they've said he's killed 127 zombies as of March 9th, 2014. So a little older. And 70 of those kills were with this weapon.
Hmm,
And I don't know if maybe they're counting some of the kills that Otis got with it. I assume that they are not. But
probably not.
he lent it to Otis, and Otis got like at least 5 or 6 headshots with it, so he did a good job. Um, so that's Rick with the old Colt Python. Daryl Dixon is up next with 98 kills, 60 of those being with his Horton Scout 125 crossbow, which comes into play in the episode, the first episode that we're going to be reviewing today. Kind of a backhanded manner, I'd say. So they also rate all of these weapons by with pros and cons, and they'll talk about the average cost per round. The average cost per 357 round is $1 for Rick, and it's $5 per crossbow bolt for Daryl.
But and we talked about this a little bit while we were discussing this infographic. They're saying that one of the cons is that you can reuse it, so I don't really understand that.
I think it's both a pro and a con where you have to go and get it
And retrieve it. Yeah.
and retrieve it from in a zombie apocalypse. Maybe you don't want to spend a lot of time scavenging the dead after a shootout.
Oh, who doesn't like to scavenge the dead?
I feel like
I,
throughout the show, Daryl's relative scarcity of ammunition is kind of a even if they're not talking about it, you can always see exactly how many bolts he has in his quiver. It's like, oh, he's only got 3. I feel like he never really has a full quiver, as it were.
he always has a full quiver in my mind. Just saying. Anyway,
You're incorrigible.
I am.
Michonne is up next, however, with 45 kills. 31 of those are with the katana. I am curious what the other 14 were with.
Me too.
Because what else does she ever use? I don't see. She doesn't shoot guns. I mean, maybe she's like just using like environmental stuff, like the corner of a table and whatnot. But
So they're strictly in this infographic, they're strictly talking about the show though, right?
oh, I would assume because
Okay.
yeah, AMC. Oh, well, the pictures that they're using. Oh, Daryl Dixon is in this, so yeah.
Okay.
Right, and all of the infographic little faces of people, they look like their TV show counterparts. They don't look at all like the comic book.
You mean with their blank and creepy faces?
With their blank and creepy faces, but their hairstyles and clothing are
You're
all
right.
very
You're right.
much TV show. And then Glenn, this one I don't understand. They have Glenn with 31 kills, and they're saying his weapon of choice is a sharpened pipe.
See, I don't. really notice this because
It's
I've seen him
because
use other things
this
too,
is the thing.
right?
He's a jack of all trades. He kills zombies with a shelf from a pharmacy, for instance.
Right.
It's just that he did so much fence duty, I guess, in season 4 that they were like, well, he obviously loves the sharpened pipe more than any other weapon. But I
Yep.
think that the thing about Glenn is that he'll use whatever is at hand.
Yeah, he's kind of like, well, I shouldn't say that. Never mind. I was gonna say he was like the Chan using like random things around him as weapons. So maybe he is the Jackie Chan of The Walking Dead.
I don't know that Jackie Chan would live very long in a zombie apocalypse, honestly.
Of course he would. He'd flip around. He'd use ladders. He's fantastic.
He's also like a retiree, so I don't know.
He's still spry.
Hmm, could be. I don't know how much he's into using weapons other than he's more about using his hands.
Hmm. True.
I've definitely seen Jet Li use weapons in film.
Jet Li uses weapons, but I mean,
Of course,
I
he's
don't know.
also like retiree age.
Well, gosh, if you were doing all the things that they are doing,
I would have retired like 20
their
years
their
ago.
bodies are probably like they might be bionic men at this point. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, either way, 31 kills for Glenn, 9 of them with a pipe. Uh, and the pros are no ammunition. So sorry about that, 9mm.com. 9mm ammo.com.
Then
And
Maggie.
Maggie, 25 kills. I have to wonder if that includes. Can I do one spoiler for season 4?
Yeah, go for it.
The no parking sign scene. Dude, how far behind are you?
I'm pretty far behind.
Oh no. Okay, well keep an eye out for that. It's pretty fucking awesome.
Okay.
Um, let's see, 25 kills. I feel
The
like
nice thing
she.
is, the nice thing is, I have a very long flight ahead of me, and I have loaded everything. So
Oh
that
yeah.
that's what I'm going to be doing.
Hopefully
And
you're not sitting next to like a 5-year-old.
I am sitting next to Bill, but he's going to have to put on his little blinders and listen to his podcasts and not pay attention to what I'm watching. So,
Wonderful. All right. Well, they're saying that Maggie, as of like early March this year, had only 25 kills, and 6 of those were with a Glock 17. I think she has vastly improved upon that since that date. Not, I mean, I think she's probably added, yeah, a fair amount to that.
cool. And then our favorite little sociopath, Carl Grimes.
Carl Grimes with a Beretta 92 FS or an M9 with a silencer.
Hmm.
41 kills, 34 with the Beretta. And yeah, I wouldn't want to see him starting to go more towards a melee weapon at this point. But look at
No.
that. The cost per round for the 9mm is 30 cents. So compare that with Rick's rounds. And don't just think about the cost. I mean, it's also like the prevalence and how common they are to find.
Well, the
9mm
scarcity.
is,
Yep.
yeah, they're so common. Like Walmart will definitely carry 9mm, less likely that they will have 357. And so finding those rounds is a big consideration. And then Tyrese, 40 kills, all 40 with a hammer. The man has picked his weapon and he is sticking to it.
Much like Doctor Who, he is anti-gun, so you never see him shooting. So,
His hammer in the show is also really cool. Like it's got a very narrow. I
yeah,
would be
it's
actually
cool
be a
looking.
little nervous to use it because I'd feel like the metal might bend, but
Hmm.
it's holding up so far.
Maybe it's like titanium or something.
I was honestly at the gym this morning. I go to a trainer and we use like these big 8-pound sledgehammers and we hit a tire. And I
Really?
was like,
Wait, what
this
kind
is
of a
awesome.
trainer do you go to?
Kind of,
You hit a tire with the hammers?
yeah, like big truck tires. You don't do that? That's not what you do at your gym?
Well, wait, so you do this inside the gym or outside the gym?
Well, let's call it a quote unquote gym. It's a big warehouse space. It's very bare bones. We make
Wait,
do.
wait, wait, wait. Do you have like a zombie survival trainer? Is that what you're telling me?
No, not at all. Honestly, the sledgehammer is the only remotely weapon-like thing we use. Everything else is like sit-ups and burpees and whatnot.
Oh, burpees.
Yeah, burpees. I did a lot of those.
Rough.
It was tough. It was not a fun morning.
Uh,
However, sledgehammering is always a good time, and I'm like, I need one of these in my house. I should go out and get
Yeah,
myself a.
I need to get back into my routine, and now I feel all like schlubby because I'm just sitting here drinking a beer when you went and were at the gym hitting things with sledgehammers this morning.
Yeah.
I'm a
Well,
waste of space. It's true.
there's always time. I mean, there's gotta be time in your day to sit down and drink a beer and and then there's times when you kill 15 zombies and three of them were with a knife, as in the
That's
case
true.
of Carol Pelletier. Weapon of
Carol's
choice.
she's come so far from I don't know how to use that weapon
Yeah.
to like training children and being pretty badass.
And now her
So
knife, and they show it in this infographic in season 4, her knife is basically a giant 6-inch blade with knuckle duster handle.
it's pretty sweet.
I love this knife.
It's a pretty nice knife. But you know, and I know that there's some debate about this, but she does kill non-zombies, but sometimes that's harder.
Um, I guess. I mean, her and Shane are kind of like on converging, you
Yeah,
know?
I know. But, you know, in some cases, yeah, I don't want to spoil things, but, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes her madness makes sense to me.
And so does Shane's. I mean, I'm watching these episodes that we talked about, we're going to talk about today, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's Shane going ahead and making sense again. Because I don't know. It's a that's one of the things I love about this show, and even though these episodes are kind of slower, they are dealing with a lot of these issues where it's like, well, what life are we, what world are we living in now, and how much do we have to change to be able to survive in it? I feel like these are questions worth asking. It doesn't seem like Shane is actually asking the questions. He's just like, this is how it is, and this is how it's got to be, and everybody else is like,
Yeah,
are you sure?
but he's also, I mean, I don't always agree with Shane's delivery, but some of the points that he's trying to put across make sense. And, you know, some of the things it's that whole question where, yeah, in a civilized society, this is all well and good, but we have to be realistic about what we can do here. So
Yeah.
with the resources that we have and the time that we have, um, but let's get into that. If you are ready to move on, because
Yeah, that's our
that's a
news
huge
segment.
because that is a huge theme
Totally.
in the next episode we are going to
In
discuss.
episode 5, entitled Chupacabra, which I kind of have a bone to pick with right away.
Yeah.
Um, Other than a couple of references to Daryl telling a story about how he thought he saw a chupacabra once, which, if you don't know, it's Spanish for goat sucker, and it's just like a mythical animal that sucks exsanguinates livestock.
Hmm.
So there you go. That's the name of the episode. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. It's directed by Guy Ferland and written by David Leslie Johnson, and it aired in November of 2011.
Well, we could talk about that a little bit, but I think that primarily it's named that just because there's a lot relating to Daryl here, and
It's yeah,
some of the things that he goes through, I think, have something to do with, you know, reality versus illusion, um, and you know, some of that stuff, and what he's willing to share with the group, what his roots are, where his loyalties are.
they do deal with a lot of this stuff, and I wonder, because they spend so much time developing his character in this episode, this could be arguably, sorry, motorcycle.
It's a pretty loud motorcycle.
Yeah, the bigger the better. He's already like a mile away, and I can still hear it.
Well, they put those pipes on, right?
Them pipes.
Them pipes.
This episode deals with Daryl and his backstory a lot, as you mentioned, and I wonder if you couldn't make an argument that this episode is kind of where the cult of Daryl probably takes a foothold in the fan base. I don't feel like he's really been given that much screen time to and or like positive shit to make all the fan base fall in love with him as much as they have by this
Yeah, but
point.
you know what? He's got some really good one-liners. He is in the pieces that in the parts that he has and the lines that he has, I
You mean
think that he
prior to
make
this episode, or
yes, I
yeah?
think he makes the most of it. And I honestly think that this was sort of the reaction. Kyle, in our last episode, he was saying that he felt like this season, because of all the things going on with Master Darabont and things like that, they were put into this position where they weren't sure what to do with as many episodes, and to him it felt like they were stretching things a bit,
Hmm.
hence the well zombie and things like that. And not that this is what happened here, but I think that they were looking for ways to develop characters, and I do think that his character was getting such a positive reaction that they just decided to highlight him. So that's, or they had an idea that they wanted to do that this season, and this is sort of the episode where that plan came to fruition.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, you leave this episode kind of like much more in awe of Daryl. When you think of it from an overall
Some of us
narrative
are
arc,
fans from the beginning, Stuart.
whatever.
I
Some of
was,
us, some of
seriously.
us just really liked Boondock Saints, and just wanted to see him do well.
Well, yes, there is that too. I was a fan.
But
I was a fan at hello.
if you branch back out though and look at the overall narrative arc, and I know we've already kind of torn this to shreds from the last episode we looked at with the Well Walker and everything. He has basically done the same thing in the last episode as he did this episode. He's like just going out by himself and looking for Sophia. Um, so it's a little bit kind of like it kind of in a way also just continues the problem with this season, which is there isn't enough progress, and they're just doing the same things over and over again. Even though this day out by himself is obviously much worse than the one he had yesterday, it's just a
Right.
little weird that they choose to have that happen twice.
Yeah, I suppose so. But maybe it's to show the effect of him going out by himself. I mean, obviously he can take care of himself, and he did so in this episode. But I thought that this was sort of a test for him. No,
Yeah, yeah. But let's start from the beginning because are you cool to do that?
I suppose so. Go for
Oh,
it.
okay, yeah. We'll have to stop talking about Daryl for 30 seconds if you can stomach it.
Yes, yes, I guess so. Go ahead.
We begin with a flashback, and one of this
And
is
we know how you love those
I
flashbacks.
love the flashbacks, but this is a flashback where the zombie apocalypse has already begun. It's just they don't really know exactly what it is they're dealing with yet. They probably still think it's riots or something,
Hmm.
because now we have Shane, Carl, and Lori in a traffic jam where people are taking out their lawn chairs. They've obviously been there a while. They don't plan on going anywhere soon, and we learn that they've already met Carol and her husband Ed and Sophia, and Carl and Sophia are playing checkers. Radio has gone dead. There's a lot of stuff we learn in this episode, which is nice. Like they don't have any food. Um, and we also learned that Shane and Lori are perfectly willing to leave Carl alone with some strangers as they walk off up down the road. Up
Yeah, which
down.
is kind of strange, especially when you consider that um well, a little bit when you see the reaction from Carol's husband just about sharing supplies and things like that. So, you know what I'm saying? They're leaving Carl with these people that don't want to share things.
Well, Carol, I think they got a good vibe off of it, but Ed is, well, kind of
Well,
in a
Ed's
way being
Ed, and
sensible.
we know that. We know Ed's Ed, but even so.
Yeah. Even so, I wouldn't leave Carl alone with them necessarily. I wouldn't. It's just amazing. Like I feel like we don't. It's hard to say how much they know, and it seems if they're going to leave Carl alone, although that's really no good basis by which to judge, since Carl is left alone a lot, as we'll see. They're willing to leave him alone. It means that they don't really feel like they're in any peril, but they must.
I guess so, but all the stuff that's going on, there is a lot of like they're stuck in this traffic jam, and they don't, they're trying to get more information, whatever. And I guess to me, it just feels like things are so confusing, and they can turn on a dime. So I just, from when I was watching this and thinking about it from my perspective, I do not have children, so I can't talk about what I would do with my own child, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I feel pretty strongly about them. Um, and if all the world was kind of going to hell, even if I didn't, if there was a sort of question mark, which there seems to be here, I don't know that I would be just putting any distance between myself and them.
Yeah.
And this seemed very weird to me. Um, but I also think that this whole scene was to basically show Shane and Lori working as a team and basically working as a couple
Yeah, essentially.
prior to all of this, everything else happening. And we see what does happen in this traffic jam eventually. But um,
Well, yeah, go there. I mean, it's kind of a weird, not super well done CGI scene.
no,
But
no, it's not. So basically, the emergency broadcasts have stopped. Um, and then as they're kind of hanging out there, this whole huge fight breaks out on the highway. And there's, it's basically they're trying to figure out what's going on. Um, but they're also watching the military take action. And the the aircraft, I don't, you should probably talk more about this than I, but they're basically putting out like charges to destroy the city of Atlanta.
oh, so cute when you say that.
I don't even know what I'm talking about. That's why I want you to talk about it. I have no idea.
The helicopters are putting
I,
out charges. No, even what they say in the
they're
show
putting
doesn't
out.
make any sense.
They're making things explode. I mean, it's hard to tell exactly what they're trying to accomplish, but I mean, what exactly is it that they're shooting?
They say that they're napalming the streets of Atlanta is basically what Shane says, but
Well, it's
I'm
what he says, but is that what it looks like? Because that's not. I don't know.
napalm. No, napalm looks a little bit more like a lot of smoke with some sparks and stuff flying out of it.
Okay, so I'm not wrong. Like, because
Oh,
that's why I was like
I'm saying
not
it's the
saying that.
TV show was also not really reflecting very well. The CGI wasn't reflecting very well what Shane said they were doing. Um, at least I'm thinking of white phosphorus. I'm not even sure what napalm even looks like because it's been illegal for a really long time, and so yeah. However,
But anyway,
helicopters
what
would
this
not be. There's like 100 helicopters in the air over Atlanta, and they're shooting their nose cannons and stuff, and there's a lot of explosions going off. So it's like they're bombing the city, which is it's a very weird scene, and it just doesn't feel that real, and it looks kind of bad. And they're also just like they walk off the highway into the woods, and then they
because
can
that's
see.
I know.
Um, so flashback, that's it really, and then we go credits, and then we come back to present day,
Right.
and they're all like planning their search techniques for Sophia. Because do you even know how many days it's been at this point? Is it day 4
No,
since she
but it feels
disappeared?
like day 4, and it's yeah.
Well, this directly transitions into what Rick and Shane are arguing about after they go out into the woods together. So people pair off and go out into the woods, except for Daryl, who goes out by himself with a horse.
Yeah.
'Cause- and Rick and Shane have a really, I feel like even though the scene goes on forever, it's actually really good. They start
Well,
off
right, because they're talking about
high
like
school girlfriends. No, I thought that was funny. Like it serves to underline how well they know each other. I
right.
don't know. Maybe it's a little like obvious, but Rick obviously he uses this as an excuse to get Shane to talk to him.
Right.
It's like, tell me about that waitress you once had sex with, and and that starts a conversation. But then the conversation's quickly, not quickly, after like several girlfriends of discussion, turns into we shouldn't be looking for Sophia. This is a waste of time and it's dangerous. And for missing children, we only in the real world or in the world that was, we only gave them 72 hours before then we were looking for a body. And that was before.
Right. And, I think Shane also brings up a lot of good points, which is like, while we're looking for her, and because we're looking for her, we've lost people, or we've come near to losing people. Like Carl almost dies, Otis did die, although, of course,
Yeah,
Rick
that's
doesn't
crazy.
know.
He can pull that one
He,
out.
he pulls that one out, and I'm just like, oh, you are so cold.
You went there.
Um, he totally did. And then, and there are valid points, even though they are hard points to take. And, if you were in this situation and your kid was missing, you're going to try to look as long as you can. It's very hard to separate this out. And I understand that. But then again, Rick and even Shane are definitely, they're taking on leadership roles in this group. So they are the ones who have to have these hard conversations, right?
Yeah, but they're obviously coming at this from two different directions. And honestly, if I have to weigh in, and I'm a kind of an unapologetic Shane fan on some levels. I mean, I know he goes too far, but uh, Rick basically says he admits like I had her and then I let her go, and it's kind of just out of
Well,
guilt that he's.
and a lot of it's out of guilt, but you know what? He's also a dad. Shane is not, even though he has some fatherly feelings for Carl. But I mean, I think it would be very hard to go back to that camp and to tell Carol, hey, by the way, we're giving up on looking for your kid. And also, now that they're in this somewhat of a safe haven, you know, I and they're not necessarily staying, but they're hoping to stay, or some of them are hoping to stay.
Mhm.
To that urgency is not there. It's not like they're on the move and, you know,
Yeah.
need to get out of a place. I mean, you could argue that they should be, but they're not at this point, and they're in this kind of lull at the moment.
That's a fair point. We see Carl is still bedridden during this episode,
Yep.
especially when Lori figures out, she figured out at the end of last episode that she's prego. Glenn kind of starts to approach her about it, and he's like, "Why doesn't Rick know?" and all this stuff, and it's
I
this.
love how mortified Glenn is in this whole thing.
Yeah, this is just the beginning of him having way too many confidences that he has no capability of holding on to,
I
basically.
know.
And it's kind of funny, but it's also not great. Uh, it's obviously everybody's got secrets, and kind of
Well, it's
Glenn is
true.
in the middle.
But what's funny to me is that you would imagine that Glenn would totally understand why she hasn't told Rick, because Glenn absolutely knows what was going on with her and Shane before Rick showed up.
Well, that's not what Dale says in the next episode.
Mm,
And
I don't
Dale
know.
is really, kind of a snooper. And so if Dale even says like, I didn't know for sure until you just confirmed it. And we can assume that Glenn is actually fairly naive and wouldn't really pick up on all these signals.
I don't know, but it was pretty clear when they were at the camp that they were a couple. I mean, they were sleeping in the same tent.
But they were hiding it from Carl, which meant they were probably hiding it from
Maybe,
everybody
but you're in
else.
like a tiny camp. I think that the weird thing that Dale said was super strange, but we can talk. I mean, I agree with you, and I know that Dale said that, but I disbelieve that completely.
Fair enough. But do you disbelieve that Daryl fell off a horse?
Yeah, kind of. He's like so badass.
How could he fall off a horse? Because he's riding a dumb horse called Nervous Nelly. That's really why.
Yeah.
So yeah, Daryl, his horse gets spooked by a snake. Daryl has already like picked up Sophia's doll out of a riverbed,
Hmm.
but now he falls off his horse and then falls down a fairly steep hill, um, somehow managing to impale himself with one of his last crossbow bolts.
I mean, this is the episode that is just, it shouldn't be, the title shouldn't be Chupacabra. It should be Daryl is a badass. No?
Fine, yes. Daryl, the amount of time that he spends asleep or unconscious in the wilderness is zombie logic defying. Like the fact that he isn't just lunch. So he
And his
falls
hair
down.
and his hair manages to look super fantastic, even though it's, you
Did you
know.
notice the scene where he rips his sleeves off of his shirt?
Yes,
I was
yes,
like,
it was
here, this is it.
amazing.
This is
You
where it happens.
were you like, this scene is for Conrad?
No,
Oh.
I was just, well, okay, yes. I was just like, this is where he establishes that he hates sleeves. So
Anyway, so he's having a rough day. Let's just put it that way.
he starts off with having a rough day, and then he like wakes up. He's stabbed with a arrow. He finds his crossbow again. He tries to climb up the side of this gully or whatever, and
And then he just fails.
falls back
Fails
down.
horribly.
And then he's unconscious again. And then Merle shows up.
Yeah, it's never a good sign when Merle shows up. He's bad news.
It's fairly obvious that it was like a dream or like, a concussive event or something. But Merle gives him a lot of advice.
Yeah.
Most
Well, I mean,
there you go.
I viewed most of this as just basically Daryl battling out thoughts he's having in his own head. So the whole thing is about, Merle basically saying, "Why are you still with these people, and why are you not searching for me? Your loyalties are ridiculous and skewed. You should just go and kill Rick, or, you know, at the very least, leave the group."
Yeah.
Um, and and basically the whole argument is that they're family, they're blood, and whatever. So I mean, it's clear to me that this is an argument that is not real. Well, that's in his own head
It's a
because
fairly one-sided Merle argument because all Daryl can do is be like, "Shut up."
yeah, that's pretty, yeah, definitely.
But ultimately, he rejects Merle's whatever arguments because when he finally climbs out of that gully after killing two zombies in pretty awesome ways,
Seriously.
he doesn't take the well, his brother shows up and offers him his hand, and he does not take it, which is probably a
Nope.
good thing because if he had, he would have fallen right back down the fucking hill.
Well, let's face it, Merle is kind of out one hand, so it probably wouldn't be a good idea to grab onto one that may or may not be a hallucination.
It's a good
Just
call.
say.
It's a good call. Um, but he does some weird stuff. Like after he kills the zombies, he takes a squirrel that he had shot earlier and eats it raw, and then makes a necklace out of zombie ears. It all seems a little bit like what just happened.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I don't know if this was just him going around the bend, this is his way of relaxing after a long day of survival. I don't know. It was a little strange. I didn't think that it matched what he was going through, but I felt this was more proof that he's a badass and going through a rite of passage because now he's wearing zombie ears all over him.
Yeah, you could definitely call it a rite of passage. I could see that. I feel like though he's already proved himself as a zombie killer, but this was like him really going out to the edge.
Yeah.
And
But
pushing it
meanwhile,
further, pushing it even further to the edge
true.
when he gets back to camp. Um, yeah, goddamn Andrea.
Yeah.
Andrea shoots Daryl. That's the short story. I mean, and in such a dangerous way. There's four friendlies between her and the target, essentially, are off just a slight couple degrees, but they are much closer to him than she is. But she's just like, "Shut up, Dale! I'm taking the shot," and shoots him in the head.
Well, it's because she thinks that he's a zombie.
Regardless, she was not in a position to observe well enough. Like she had sun in her eyes and everything.
True,
There was no
true.
reason to take that shot, especially when you had four people out in front of you. Some of them had guns. They were all armed. Actually, I think Shane even had a pickaxe, which was kind of awesome.
Yeah,
Wish they'd held on to that pickaxe in future episodes.
indeed.
Yeah. So she shoots Daryl, and then she's like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And of course, Dale is like, "Don't do it," and she's like, "Shut up, Dale."
Cassandra, he's a Cassandra, I'm telling you.
Poor fella. Poor fella. So that happens, but luckily Daryl doesn't die because she's a terrible shot, and everybody ends up back in the house where we have this a couple of interactions between Shane and Rick, and then Lori and Shane, where Shane is basically still giving Rick a hard time about how he's not making tough decisions, and Rick is even starting to doubt himself, and he's like, maybe I'm making a mistake by putting all these other able-bodied people in danger when we're just looking for Sophia, who's more than likely dead. But then, and when Shane says to Lori, like as he's walking by her, he's gonna have to start making these tough decisions. She says some stuff that really makes sense. And Rick has already gone out of earshot, but this is just like Lori and Shane having it out a little bit, and I enjoyed this little exchange.
Well, and it's honestly, it's one of the first times that Lori appears to be making sense and isn't just being Lori and annoying. So we have to give her some credit. Um, and she's basically saying that it's pretty hard to make these decisions as a leader, and that Shane is not having to make these decisions. So I don't know.
Well,
It's
I don't know that it's even that simple. It's also more like what you got there.
sorry. I now have a grilled cheese sandwich. Apologies for the
That sounds
crinkling.
awesome.
Pretty awesome. Thanks for crinkling up paper that you have no food in.
It's just a piece of note paper. Grilled cheese
But
sandwich.
I mean, the thing is that, basically she's saying he has to make these choices and they're very hard. And if this, she basically likens the situation, like if, for example, if Carl was missing, um, she would want to know what happened to him, even if it was bad news.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, and it's hard.
But it's not even.
And
I don't feel like she's even taking it down to that. What she is, that is important to her. But she's also just like, look, what he's doing. It's not just like that. It's a tough leadership decision. It's that it's the only right decision because where Shane is advocating, the girl is dead. We should just forget about it. Rick and Lori now are advocating. It's really too easy of a decision to be like, okay, she's dead, and we're not going to look for her.
right.
This is a child. This is our group. She's worried about group cohesion. He's really not worried about that, and I'm curious why. It's really not like a big picture leadership decision on his part to completely say to not come up with a better argument, I guess,
Hmm.
because like you said, they are in a fairly safe spot right now. There's no reason not to do this looking around while they're there, and Carl can't go anywhere anyway. So I don't know why he's
Well,
getting his so upset about the fact that they're out in the woods looking for Sophia at this point.
but maybe it's like, Rick wants to probably stay there at the farm and Shane is still focused on moving on,
Potentially,
perhaps.
he doesn't really seem that motivated.
But also, I mean, I don't think Shane views, and obviously we saw with his behavior with Otis, which Lori has no idea about, but the only group that Shane sees is him and Lori and Carl, and perhaps in a weird, freaky way, Rick. But he doesn't really have any loyalty to anybody else within the group.
Yeah, it's true.
So maybe that's where this is coming from. And maybe it's also guilt because he wants to get away from there because even though he pretty coldly took Otis out and let the zombies eat him as bait, maybe he just wants to get away from the scene of the crime.
Yeah, that would be a pretty good motivation too. I just don't feel like as an audience we really get a good handle on that.
Mm.
Um, and Laurie ends the conversation by he's like, all I care about is you and Carl. He doesn't say Rick, and she's like, well, we're not your problem anymore or your excuse because obviously she thinks that he's just using them to act selfish,
Mm.
and I can see where she's coming from, and that's
Hmm.
very weird. I'm not used to that. And then other things that are going on is Herschel is like, why did Daryl take one of the horses without asking, and
That
why
was
did
Nervous Nelly.
why did Jimmy or Billy or whatever his name is,
Jimmy.
why did he go out with you? He's 17. He's my responsibility. Let's just agree to keep our people separate. And it starts to feel very
Creepy.
uncool. Herschel's being uncool.
Yeah, but he's being uncool. But, from his perspective, we also remember that he's hiding his deep, dark secret in the barn. And he has different views on the whole situation
Yeah.
and obviously doesn't agree with what this group has been doing.
Didn't he call
So,
like the Well Walker event an abomination or something,
yeah,
or like a
yeah,
war
but not
crime?
for the same, he didn't acknowledge why they needed to kill the Well Walker.
Yeah.
Um,
We don't kill
it's
people.
Right. Like he's still viewing these as diseased humans, and um I mean, I think he's just trying to muddle through the situation and then get off my lawn. Like get him out of there.
Yeah. I feel
So
like Rick really needs to hear it when he says stuff like this, as in alarm bells. But at the same time, they're super nice, and they're sharing stuff. They're planning on having a big dinner together.
yeah, but
Even
Herschel isn't even psyched about that because he
no,
feels like they're invading his territory.
oh, he also tells
And
Maggie like, don't get
I
too
was
close
about
to
to
these
say,
people.
like,
Yeah,
and he also refers to Glenn as the Asian man or something weird like that, doesn't he?
something like
He
that.
says something really funny about Glenn, obviously not knowing that they've had a tryst.
Hmm.
So, um, he's very much like, let's keep our people separate.
Yeah, and he
Um,
tries to tell that to Maggie, and who knows if that doesn't just like trigger her later behavior? Because earlier in the episode, Glenn is like, "Hey, I've still got more condoms," and she's like, "Whatever, step
yeah,
off. I don't even know if I like you that much, and I only have sex
yeah.
at pharmacies."
I was just having fun, and Glenn is so, oh, poor Glenn, so deflated, but hopeful still.
Well, at dinner, at this big group dinner at the end of the, fairly close to the end of the episode, it's super awkward. Nobody's talking to each other because Herschel is like shocked that they managed to shoot Daryl. He's like, "What is going on out here? You people are crazy." And it's like, "No, it's just Andrea. She's fucking terrible." But Maggie and Glenn start passing notes about meeting for sex later after dinner, and
Mm,
somehow they don't communicate very well. Probably because everybody's looking at them, and
mm.
as they're passing these notes, even though they're like both in their 20s, it's kind of crazy that they're having to act like teenagers. But that's the world they live in.
Yep.
And Glenn makes the big discovery about all the zombies in the barn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess we probably all kind of knew that was coming.
Hmm.
And that's the end of that episode. He runs into Maggie's like, "Holy shit, what is this?" And she's like, "You weren't supposed to see that." Oftentimes, when somebody says you weren't supposed to see that, it
They usually kill
yeah,
people
the
when that
next thing that
happens.
happens is they kill the person who saw it.
I'll
Luckily,
admit, when I first saw this, I thought that that was what was going to happen.
yeah,
And I was like, really? They're going to take out Glenn that early? And then they didn't. So that was all right.
yeah. Luckily, the Greens are a good family, and although they have some weird ideas about zombies, they didn't just kill Glenn for realizing that they were keeping a bunch of them in their barn.
Right.
And that's the end of Chupacabra, and it's a yeah, it's no Otis and Shane episode, but it's a good episode. I mean, especially when it comes to Daryl's character, as we discussed, and some of this Shane and Lori stuff that was going on. It's I don't know. Yeah, it's a good overall. I enjoyed this episode.
No, I did too.
How's that grilled cheese going down?
It's delicious. Sorry.
It's okay. I
You
know
know, one of the things in New York that's pretty amazing is diner food.
we got diners out here, man. I can.
It's
Although
not the same.
you're right. No, it's not the same.
Aliseo is the chef at this diner, and he's really good.
What kind of cheese is it?
Just American.
American cheese.
It's got tomato on it.
Looks like Holly's on her way home. We should try
All
and
right.
wrap this up this next episode.
Hurry up before Holly gets home. Um,
She's 7 minutes away.
7 minutes.
I don't think we could do it. So next
But
episode is called
secrets,
Secrets, and
which
I
was
hate
my
that
theme
title.
for a couple of episodes ago. I'm
Yeah.
like, the secrets is pretty much this
Well,
whole little.
this is part of the problem with this season. Is like, yeah, they've already introduced the fact that Glenn is like the bearer of secrets, and that everybody's keeping secrets, and now they have an episode that is even more about secrets. It's like, all right, guys, you can't just keep rehashing the same thematic content.
Hmm.
So this one is directed by David Boyd and written by Angela King, and it
Not Boyd
starts
Banks.
not Boyd Banks, although maybe that's a pseudonym.
Mm.
It starts with a good thing. It starts with shooting practice, or I'm not even remembering what comes before the title credits. Do you recall?
I don't actually. That shows you. I really did like Chupacabra more than this particular episode. So
Yeah. But the shooting practice is the first thing that stands out in my mind. A bunch of people, a whole bunch of people go out to shoot guns, and including Carl,
Right.
which is part of an argument. But yeah, so much of this episode I was just like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care.
Although
Uh,
I was relieved to see them actually prepping and figuring out, like, getting everybody trained so they can actually be of use.
yeah, it was such a long time coming, though, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so they go out and they do their shooting practice, and Andrea finally seems to be showing promise, right? She's like,
Yeah.
she's shooting stuff, she's doing well. She's like, I like the weight of this bigger gun than my own gun.
Whatever. She's still on my bad list for shooting Daryl. She can
She,
just go screw.
I'm surprised that she's even willing to hold a gun after shooting her friend the day before, but yeah.
I know.
Um, she graduates to advanced training with Shane, which I should also, speaking of like alarm bells, that should be setting those off too.
Yeah, it's like crazy and crazy. Dudes, this is
Um,
not a good idea.
Glenn begs off of going to shooting practice so that he can hang out with Dale, and then he just tells Dale all of the
All
confidences
the
that he was
secrets.
supposed to keep, which are
Well,
basically
you knew he was going to do that. He desperately wanted to tell somebody.
yeah.
You're old. You know things. So, what if somebody told you something that somebody else should know?
Glenn, stop being dramatic. Spit it out.
There's walkers in the barn and Lori's pregnant.
Dale gives him the immediate crazy eyebrow treatment.
His eyebrows may go up a lot further than we have seen, though.
I mean, it's so often they're hidden by his hat.
True.
His eyebrows are something else. There's so much there.
Well, and then I don't know. But then Dale, having found this out about what's going on in the barn.
Like when he sidles up to Herschel.
Yeah, like I actually feel like this was like a genuine cool thing that Dale tried to do, in which he tries to explain to Herschel that these aren't humans anymore. And Herschel, you find out Herschel's real belief here, which is that they're still people, and that if you kill them, it's murder. And he's very religious, and Dale, unfortunately, unsuccessfully, does not convince Herschel of the truth. But he does suggest that perhaps it might be a good idea to strengthen the barn so that they don't get out.
And Herschel's like, no, the barn's strong enough, and you guys just should go home or go away.
He's a go away.
He's not being, yeah, he's
Get
just
off
not
my
being great.
lawn. Yeah, so I mean, I have to hand it to Dale. That was a hero's mission, and I just um I felt badly for him, and I felt also badly for Herschel, because if that's really what he thinks about all this, honestly though, if that's what he thinks about all this, it's surprising to me that um he hasn't voiced this more clearly to the group, that this is what his beliefs are, and this is why their groups are not going to get on well together.
I feel like it's pretty clear to the audience already that he feels this way. That
Well,
he's
it
just,
is, but it's not clear to everybody. It's not
yeah.
clear to the Rick Grimes and et al. Like it's even with his little offhand comments, you would think if he feels as strongly, he would basically, the whole guns thing. Yes, he said that, but he could just be anti-violence, and the
Yeah, he could
abomination
have been a
thing.
lot more explicit up to the point of being like, oh, and also there's a bunch of zombies in the barn.
Yeah.
He could have already laid it all out there. But honestly, speaking of laying it all out there, Dale in this episode, this is kind of like all he does. Well, he
Yeah,
does it twice, and in this case, it really doesn't work out. And then the next time that he goes up to someone and is like, I know all this stuff, it also really goes badly. So I'm surprised that he keeps up with this technique of like the one-on-one you know intervention type conversations, because the
That's
next
his
time he does it
job.
with he does it with
He's
Shane, and it goes
he's
way worse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but he is the Cassandra. Nobody ever believes him. Nobody ever follows his advice. So he's just used to it by now.
Maybe this is just him getting, I mean, I feel like for the rest of the season even, he's the guy who is like, hey man, we're broken, everything's not okay. um and it still ends with him meeting an untimely end.
Yeah, yeah.
Spoiler alert. You like how I always do the spoiler alert after the spoiler?
After the spoiler, yeah,
That's my, that's how I do it. Just so you know.
yeah, it's pretty good.
So what else is happening? We've got Andrea and Shane doing advanced gun practice where she has to shoot a log on a string and she cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets very upset when Shane is like, "That log killed your sister."
Yeah,
And then she
that
walks
wasn't
away.
cool.
It wasn't
But
cool,
there's also,
but she was missing the log. I mean,
yeah. And also a part of this is, a couple of the members of Herschel's group have asked to be trained because apparently Otis was the only person that had been able to shoot anything.
hmm.
Um, so it was Beth who has to be trained and Patricia. And, Rick trying to be peacemaker here basically says, well, it's fine as long as Herschel is okay with it. Because he's trying to do the right thing and respect Herschel's law. But man, can you imagine if Rick's group wasn't here, that there was only one person on that entire farm who was able to dispatch a zombie?
I feel like they're probably hardier than they let themselves, like they're killing chickens. That's what's happening before the credits, right?
Oh, that's right.
Patricia is
To
breaking
kill the
chicken
chicken to
legs.
feed to the barn zombies.
They're feeding damn live chicken, like good human food to zombies, and that's pretty rage inducing right there. But I mean, they're farmers. They're hardier than your average person.
Mm.
I don't know. That'll be my take on it. Like they know their way around
Farmers.
the
They're
hoe.
farmers, really?
What?
Okay, okay.
They're not farmers. They live on a farm.
They are, but so much of farming is now just.
Well, these are not. They don't. Have you seen any like big tractors or anything? No, these guys are all. I mean, they have cows too.
They're all DIY artisanal farmers.
They live in freaking La La Land, where no zombies
Okay.
even come up to their place anyway. So who are we to question their 19th century farming techniques?
True. True.
I would just say that, like, yeah, even though, okay, they don't know their way around a gun, I think we're all gonna learn as an audience that guns aren't necessarily the way you want to go in this particular crisis anyway.
Hmm. Okay.
That would be my argument.
Um.
Give me a sharpened pipe any day, as Glenn finds out.
Um. And then you have more of the Lori drama, right?
This is nonstop. I'm honestly, I don't really enjoy all of this. Like, oh, woe is me. I'm pregnant. What should I do? She goes to Glenn. She's like, I need more medicine.
Like the
I need
morning
your help.
after pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Glenn and Maggie go back to the pharmacy. It's been what, one day?
Yeah.
They go back to town. Maggie's all pissed at him for spilling the beans about the walkers in the barn. And they're having kind of an argument in the pharmacy when she gets attacked by a zombie, and Glenn dispatches it. Well, first he hits it with a shelf and like almost decapitates it,
Right.
and then it gets back up and is like coming after them again with its head off.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then he kills it with his machete. And that is the moment where Maggie, who had been arguing her father's side of this argument, like, I don't call them walkers, I call them Mom and Sean and Mr. and Mrs. Blah and whatever. And now this is the moment where she's, as soon as that happens in the very next scene, even though she's still mad at Glenn because she calls him an idiot for going down the well and being zombie bait for his friends, she calls them walkers in the very next scene. So it's like
She
she's
does.
come
So
around.
she's come around. And it's interesting because she basically, you see her loyalties start to switch with that
Yeah.
scene. So,
And she basically
and
admits that she cares about Glenn right there.
well, yeah, she does. And then, but then there's the whole argument about the morning after pill because Maggie's pretty upset
Well, she
at
throws it
Lori.
in Laurie's face. I feel
Right.
a little
And
bad for Lori, but at the same time,
I
Lori's
do.
doing all this stuff in secret, and none of it's very cool. But it's
Well, she does, but you know what? That's like a huge argument. I mean, aside from the idea of, and you know, there's some discussion over this in the argument, and I'm sure this is why they brought it up in the show. But she's in a world where there are no doctors, really, except for Herschel the veterinarian, and childbirth is really super dangerous.
Mhm.
Um, it really is. I mean, it's great in if people are in the best of circumstances and everything goes totally well, but when things go wrong, they go really wrong. And aside from that, she's in a zombie apocalypse. So, in addition to the idea of raising this kid in a zombie apocalypse, she also has to worry about being less able to run and get away from walkers.
well, the
And,
night before she was trying to persuade Rick that all children should die, and that basically includes Carl,
well, yeah.
or maybe it was Chance.
So she's, but maybe that's some of what's informing her decision. She's really like, this is a super stressful, horrific world that she's living in. And so I just feel like the judgment on her is like this is actually the only episode really in the series where I have some sympathy for Lori. Although some would say that the reason why she's so stressed is because she doesn't know whether the kid is Shane's or Rick's. So
That and she's trying to do it all by herself. Like, why not see what? I mean, I guess we can all assume that Rick would be like, "No, of course, life, optimism, and all this stuff," and she doesn't want to hear it because she knows what he's gonna say.
well, and of course Shane's gonna be like, "Oh, I of course want you to keep my baby, and then you'll have to admit to Rick, and then we'll be a happy couple and be together forever." So
It is a bit of a
yeah,
pickle.
you know, it's a difficult position for her to be in. But you know, I just it's a tough situation, and it is like I actually found myself surprised to be feeling sympathy for her, but I did nonetheless. So
I feel like this was the season where my dislike for Lori really kind of flourished and
yeah,
bloomed. So I don't know that I was already like anti-Lori at this point, but certainly that sentiment grows during this season and the next. Um, Although, like she kind of starts off on the wrong foot because as soon as we meet her as an audience, she's being unfaithful to her husband, although
well,
she thought he
true.
was dead, etc. But, like in a way, we're like set up to not like her.
Well, of course. But anyway, then um,
Yeah, we've got Andrea and Shane. They're off doing a
yeah,
thing. He's managed to
a
persuade her that
thing.
he
Is that
wasn't.
what it is?
It's a thing. He's like, I'm sorry for what I said about your sister's zombie being a log that you needed to shoot, and come with me. I've got a tip on where Sophia might be. You can be my backup. And so they go off to this subdivision,
Hmm.
and then they start doing a house to house search, and they somehow end up in this one house where I was really impressed with the way that they had set this up. It was like it told a story, even though there was like nothing happening. You walk into the house, it's like barricaded, but then there's some sheetrock or something is up over a hallway,
Yeah.
and they like kind of just figure out that these people had barricaded a hallway, but there's a hole that with blood around it that something had obviously gone through. So they go through the hole, and then they
Yep.
find a bunch of dead zombies. And beyond that, a garage that has been completely incinerated with a lot of bodies in it, but some of them were obviously human, or we can assume were human. And it's a really grim scene, honestly. And
Yep.
I love the way the story kind of unfolds as they go into this house.
Right. And it's no words, really. It's just all visual.
Yeah, it's messed up. And then suddenly a horde of zombies appear out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they,
But hey, learning and teaching moment, right?
yeah, they get out of there though, and this is where it becomes a really absurd teaching moment, where Andrea
Suddenly is able to get headshot after headshot after headshot.
only after she has like something clicks in her brain apparently, which is like don't shoot center mass, and also clear a jam over a 5 minute period. And Shane is not shooting to like make it work for her. I don't know. But then she gets it,
Yep.
and then
And they celebrate afterwards.
how did you feel about this? Do you think this was realistic? It's like the adrenaline kind of thing.
uh, I don't know. I just don't even. I suppose I just think they would have been too worried about getting attacked again. That's my thought.
Yeah.
They
They
probably, my
certainly.
feeling is that they would have just tried to get the heck out of there. But that isn't what they did.
I'm sure they were, by the time they were where they were when they stopped on the road again to have sex, I'm sure they were far enough away that they didn't feel threatened.
I guess. I don't know.
Um,
Maybe. But, and, the two of them, I suppose, are somewhat outcasts in the group, or at least they're not the
Andrea
most,
shot one of them yesterday, so
yeah,
yes, I would
yeah.
assume she's outcast at this point.
So they're a bit outcast. So maybe, and, they've also talked about running away together and leaving the group. So maybe this is just a bonding moment.
Yeah. Um, this is the first of Andrea's really just not good decisions concerning men in the series. We'll get to the next one later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of all that happens between them, though. I don't know. We'll watch the rest of this season, but I feel like that was it for them. But she's definitely like more on Team Shane at this point because she like believes in his teaching skills when he's not invoking the name of her recently murdered sister. When they get back to camp, they're trying to look like sad because Carol's there asking if they found anything, and they're like, "Oh no, didn't find anything. We'll look tomorrow." And Dale somehow, with the power of his magic
Knows. He
eyebrows, he's like,
knows.
he
He
looks at
knows.
Andrew, he's like, "She's no longer chased," or something, and then
Something.
chases after Shane, and he's like, "Shane, you should leave. You've got a car and lots of gas. You should go away."
Well, and so, okay, so this is the thing. How far along did you read in the Walking Dead graphic novels?
I'm up to episode like 100 and something.
Oh, so you've read them.
Yeah,
So you know the whole, like, within the storyline in the graphic novels is that Dale and Andrea have a thing. And so
you
this
feel like
made sense
this
to
is a
me. I
shadow of
thought,
that?
well, I thought that they were trying to develop that particular storyline, so obviously they didn't do that in the end, but like that's what I thought here was that that's why I thought his reaction was what it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the thing that I don't understand is that obviously Shane is totally insane. I mean, Dale has seen more of Shane's true nature than anybody, or recognized it anyway, than anybody else in the camp has. Like, why are you gonna go and basically show him all your cards?
It was stupid of him to do that. And I feel like it was an emotional response because he's
Maybe,
obviously like
but
breathing a little heavier.
it's like, dude, really? Do you want, like, you have seen him acting with his best friend.
And
Why do you think that you're gonna be like
that's
thinking,
exactly what Shane says to him. He's like, "Look, you know that I'm willing to consider murdering my best friend. Why would you think that it was a smart idea to come to me
right,
right
right.
now?" And Dale has to figure that as a pretty logical response at that point. Just like, gee, hmm. Yeah, so it was really not a good decision on his part. And we'll have to see. Maybe Shane will murder Dale. Maybe that will happen.
Perhaps. And then to round out the episode, there's the whole Lori and Rick drama, and Lori's been talking a little bit to Dale, not to Dale, sorry, to Glenn, and Glenn is basically like encouraging Lori to include Rick in her decision because he just really feels like it's unfair that she make this alone, because if he ever finds out and everything like that, it's
Hmm.
just going to be bad. And he's also brought her prenatal vitamins from the pharmacy. And we do see Lori take them, but then she throws them up. And there is an interesting exchange between Lori and Rick about all this, where she pretty much confesses to him what's happened with Shane. And Rick's like, yeah, I know all that already. Or he acknowledges that it happened.
That is an interesting moment too, because as an audience, we don't know that he knows. So yeah, I was like,
Right.
it was no inkling on our part that he was like aware of this, and all he's
And,
been is like super, conscientious and caring towards Lori since they were reunited.
right. And, it's an interesting reaction because also when he finds the pills and thinks that she's taken them and whatever, he gets very upset and he goes to find her. and they have pretty much the same argument that they had about Carl, only it's just about this baby. And he's very much like, this is worth the risk. Of course, it's what we thought before, that he's very much pro-life. And
In this scenario, I don't know that we can call this pro-life versus pro-choice. In
it
the
pretty
zombie
much
apocalypse,
is.
they're
It pretty
like
much
different
is, though.
arguments.
It's pretty much is. Rick is generally pro-life, at least in these episodes. But the interesting thing about that admission is that even though there's the possibility that this kid could be Shane's, Rick doesn't care. He still wants to be with Lori. He still wants to have this kid. And that's that. It's kind of fascinating.
Sorry, I'm
Tell me
getting
what
a lot
you
of
think.
texts. I'm getting a lot of texts right now. Can you hear that?
Yeah, who's texting
Sorry,
you?
just people about making beer.
Wait, are you making beer now?
No, but I might be. That might just be happening. It might have just
Oh.
what was just happening in those text messages.
Are
I
you
forgot,
making
and I would
are
like
you
to
making
bring
beer
up.
with goat brains?
No, not with goat brains. Although I will propose that as an option. The one thing I forgot that happened is basically this is the episode of Dale approaching people, because I forgot that he also approached Lori in this episode.
Yeah, you did. Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, I remember when my wife was pregnant, and she couldn't bear the smell of cooking meat, and she always kept throwing up." Like, so he does it 3 times in one episode. I guess that's why it feels like it starts to feel like he's really meddlesome. He's already been meddling with Andrea this whole season, or like in the last season, and now he's meddling with everybody else on top of that.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think this is pretty much just showing that Dale is concerned about the group. He's concerned about dynamics within the group, but he is never ever listened to. I mean, look, you have him talking to Shane, to Lori, to Herschel. Like he just, and even to Andrea a little bit. Although, he kind of takes that out on Shane more than Andrea, but he is just thwarted at every turn.
I think he knows he has no leg to stand on, slash, no chance of persuading Andrea that she's chosen the wrong guy to shack up with.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is the I don't know. I don't want to call it the Dale of Shame episode, but it kind of is a little bit.
Yeah, it's a weird episode. The one scene or the one section that I really enjoyed was when Andrea and Shane went to that subdivision and experienced that kind of like that scene that had unfolded in that house. Otherwise, there was just a lot of drama. Also, Glenn and Maggie in the pharmacy for the second time. That was a cool scene, and seeing how she had kind of like turned the corner on her perception of zombies was cool to watch. Otherwise, yeah, I'm psyched that Lori's keeping the baby and everything, but I don't know. I found a lot of that kind of dialogue to be annoying.
Well, yeah, but it's also one of those interesting themes that people like to talk about in terms of a post zombie world scenario.
Hmm.
I mean, we've even seen a couple of articles on that we've covered in the news items about this particular issue, regarding birth control and all of that, and why that
That's
would be
right.
important.
Survival
So,
and blog stuff. Yeah.
so I'm not surprised that it popped up, and I'm certainly not surprised that it popped up. I mean, it's obviously part of the storyline in the graphic novel, but
Yeah.
even if it hadn't been, they would have had to introduce it, in my opinion. So, yeah, it is what it is. Laurie gets to be the whipping boy for The Walking Dead.
And she is, for sure. As is Andrea. I mean,
Yes, or the whipping women, I should say.
yeah, right? I know. It's rough. Wait for Michonne to show up and then we'll be
I
okay.
know, I know.
Um,
Shown.
so yeah, that was episodes 5 and 6. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about in terms of those two episodes?
No, I think we can wrap up.
Well, so next time we're going to be discussing episodes 7 and 8. And I believe that will take us to the half season mark,
Hmm.
if not past it even. But we'll figure that one out. I wouldn't mind doing the barn standoff and then immediately going to the next episode because I remember
Yeah, I
there
think
was
we
an
should.
interminable wait between those two. Man, it was crazy.
Yeah, maybe we should. So we should probably do that. Yeah.
So yeah, join us. Please join us next time when we discuss episodes 7 and 8 of the Walking Dead season 2. And in the meantime, you can get in touch with us by leaving us a comment on our website at reanimatedpodcast.com, or you can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at reanimatedpcast. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out.
Indeed.